One thing.
Okay.
This is a Wolverine.
So this is our first live stream as well as in person. So, all right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to hand it over to Daena here in a moment. If any of you guys online have questions, just put them in the comments and we'll get to them after the presentation.
Where's the camera?
It's here facing this way. So
you're
not on.
That's okay. All right.
So it forces your income levels way up and they suck all the taxes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. Today we are welcoming Daena Ford from Braddock Raptor Research here. And she's going to tell us all about the different owls that we have in the area. And I will pass it on.
Thank you, Liz.
Of course.
Well, I'm happy to be here. It's nice. Yeah, it's a lot of owls. People don't realize how many owls we really have. Right. So my name is Daena Ford. I'm here from Braddock Bay Raptor Research. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Braddock Bay or live near there. It's not too far. It's up on the lake, on Lake Ontario, in the town of Greece. So it's really a nice straight shoot up, 390, a little bit west, and you're there. We're known for having a huge spring migration. And part of that migration actually includes a couple species of owls, which I'm going to talk about as part of the program today. We are right in the middle of migration season right now, so it's a perfect time to come and visit. We run a hawk watch. We also do some banding, and then we have owl migration, which will still continue for the next few weeks, and I'll talk about that. And we offer a lot of programs, and we have a big event coming up called Bird of Prey Days, so I hope you will check out our website, take a little flyer before you leave, and mark your calendar for the last weekend of April. And it's a great chance to come and learn even more about these birds. We have indoor programs and outdoor programs, so it's a wonderful family event for all ages. Okay, so Liz invited me here today to talk to you about the owls, different species that we have in New York State. And I noticed a few surprising responses to how many different species are up here on the screen right now. At one time of year or another, we have 11 different, 11 species of owls that will visit New York State or reside there year round. So it's got a little bit surprising. The row on the top here, these first three are probably our most common species of owls, common throughout North America, but especially in New York State in this area, year-round residents. I'll go through those first, and I'm not going to give away who's who. Yeah, we're going to go through each species. Yeah, and then down here in the middle are some of our migratory species. These two especially, and then these ones winter here. We have the barn owl, which is in a separate group all its own, and they're only found in certain parts of New York State. They're not really found around our area as much. And then the bottom are some of our winter visitors. And those numbers change throughout the years. It depends a lot. Yeah.
The long-eared owl isn't a permanent resident?
Not
goes through?
Well, mostly they're migrating through. There are some, they will breed in New York State, like more forested areas. But yeah.
But so like some of them are permanent residents.
Yes. So we're going to go through those species very, very shortly. Just a little bit more about Braddock Bay Raptor Research. We are a nonprofit organization, primarily volunteers. We have one hired position for the hawk counter in the spring, but all volunteer run. Our mission is basically to study the birds of prey, especially during the migration season around here, and share that information that we gather with the scientific community and the public in a variety of ways. So research and education are at the heart of our organization. So today's topic, of course, is owls, one of my favorite things to talk about, of course. You're going to meet this big beauty shortly. I do have a special guest with us. So after the slideshow, you can sit and meet in real life. But for a few general facts about owls as a whole in the world, in North America too, especially, we have two families. Most, the barn owls fall into the Titanidae family, and then all the other owls fall into the Strigidae family. And that's just a classification lesson for you. The majority of our owls are nocturnal, but there are some that are either crepuscular which means they're more active at dawn and dusk, or can be active during the day, especially the farther north breeding owls like snowy owls that are living in daylight almost 24 hours in the summertime. So they can be active in the daytime as well. I'm going to cover a little more of their main adaptations, including vision, hearing, and their flight. They are designed for that nocturnal lifestyle and have some special adaptations to help them be very successful hunters at night. And those are the three things that really help them quite well. There is we call sexual dimorphism in all the species, which means you have a difference between males and females. For some, very few, it's some plumage differences, but for most of them, they're all different by size. So the females tend to be much larger than the males. So that's one way we can tell apart, even if they have the same coloring, go by size. Okay. And that's true for all raptors as well. So eagles, hawks, falcons, vultures as well too. One of the fun facts is we like to sometimes comes up in our conversations is what they eat, of course, and they are predators. They are eating other animals, a variety of things from rodents and birds and reptiles. Some even eat fish, but they tend to swallow their prey whole or eat the entire animal, which includes all the fur, the feathers, and scales, and that they ingest. But they can't break that down, so they regurgitate pellets or castings. And some of you may recall dissecting them in science class, to learn about what these owls eat. And it can be a very good insight as to how the owlbirds are using the landscape and what they depend on for their food. So we talked about that's the last thing is the pellets there. Okay, so some quick little neat facts about their vision. One of the things that attracts people to owls, I think, mostly is just their expression. The position of their eyes is right at the front of their face. They almost have like this human-like expression, or it's very similar to cats even, and we're kind of drawn to that.
Fellow predators.
Yeah, right, exactly. But their position of their eyes are very helpful. All predators have their eyes focused forward for being able to judge distance better, see depth perception, and focus. But owls are right smack in the front of their face, and that helps them with that depth perception. Their eyes are built for good distance viewing, like other raptors. They can see very far away, about 8 times as better than a person. They're also built for night vision. They have a much higher concentration of light gathering cells, so they only need a little small amount of light to kind of illuminate their surroundings. And they say being able to see the objects with both eyes, that binocular vision, gives them the ability to focus better. Okay. And down here on the bottom, as I mentioned, they just need a little bit of light. They can't see in total darkness. If you remove all the light, and they've done experiments, especially with barn owls on this, where you remove completely dark room, but they use another sense, their hearing, to be successful at hunting. One of the things we always notice, and especially when you meet our great horned owl, they're always fascinated with how far owls can turn their head around. It looks like they can, turn it a full 360, but it's not quite that far. It's 270-degree range of motion. This is showing a picture of an owl skull as if you were looking down on the top of its head. Mm-hmm. These are the eye sockets, and actually inside the eyes themselves, they have a bony ring that helps support the eye and give it structure. So these are called the sclerotic rings, and most birds have that in their eyes. And so it looks a little odd, but their eyes will go back all the way back in their head there. So this kind of shows you just enormous amount of space the eyes take up in their skull. So there's no room for the muscles to move their eyes. And that means they have to be able to turn their head to see things. So 200 degrees range of motion. They have extra neck vertebrae. People have 7. Owls have 14. Looks like they have really long necks, but they're usually kind of scrunched down. That's a little odd description there, but they just have that extra flexibility there. So, but they can't see well and use those wonderful, powerful eyes. They also rely very heavily on their hearing. And you don't see an owl's ears on the outside of their head like you see ours. You have this outer ear that helps draw a sound in. But they do have these wonderful circles of feathers around their face, around their eyes, that act like our outer ear to draw the sound into their ear cavities. Interesting thing about owl's ears, look at this top picture, shows where the position of the ear canals there. And you can notice they're not symmetrical. Like we have ears pretty much right, same position on both sides of our head. But with owls, they'll have one up higher, more towards the front, the other one down lower, more towards the back, which helps in triangulation and pinpointing where sounds are coming from a little more accurately. So it's kind of an odd thing, but it's very interesting and very, very helpful for these birds. This picture down here shows the side view of a little saw-whet owl. This is a person's finger, obviously, and it's pushing back that little flap, the facial disc, to show the ear canal. So their ears are right at the edge of the facial disc that goes around their eye, but underneath the feathers there. So vision and hearing are super important for an owl's survival, especially with nocturnal habits. Silent flight is another one they're known for. They have specialized feathers that have very soft edges, there's a soft appearance to them in general, but the flight feathers especially, they have these, it's called fimbriae, but you can see how it looks like eyelashes or it's a broken up edge to help muffle the sound that the air makes moving over the wings. So they can fly without making any noise at all. And that helps them to be able to find their prey better and also sneak up on them a little better too, and that stealthy approach there. Okay, so now we're going to get into the species that we have here. What owls can we find around our homes in this area? This is one of the most common of all owls all over North America. Very versatile owl. You're going to get to meet this beautiful girl soon. This is our great horned owl, one of the largest in all species in North America. Very strong, hardy birds. The only ones that are bigger, snowy owl and great gray measures taller because they have a huge amount of fluff. But in terms of body mass, the great horned owl outdoes the gray there. So they are one of our most common owls. They're found all over the continent in a variety of habitats. A lot of wooded areas, open woods, but you can find them in urban settings, even in nest boxes or next ledges on balconies, on buildings. I just came back from a visit to Austin, Texas this last week, and we went to the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, which is awesome. The bluebonnets are blooming right now, so pretty. But my point of bringing that up is, as we walked into the center, we came across a sign that said, "Shh, we have owl nesting nearby," and they have a very beautiful sign there. As you walk in the entrance, there's a planter, a stone planter with this big agave plant sitting there over the archway where people walk through, and this great horned owl nesting right there. So you could see just her head peeking out. So sometimes they can be very tolerant and adapt very well to human dwelling type where humans are populated. So they're a really hardy species. But you can find them out in the country, out in the rural areas too. They are, I'm going to tell you a little more about the great horn as you meet her there, but this is one of our hoot owls. They make a hooting sound. I heard one last night outside my house. They do that to announce their territory. I do very bad impressions, but I'll give you my best shot. It's more like a hoo, 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 hoo.
We heard one too.
Oh, good.
Kept us.
Oh, well.
It was good.
It's worth it sometimes. So a couple more images of the great horns, some things to kind of maybe look for when you're identifying the birds or looking for the birds there. Great horns aren't named great horns because they have these feathered tufts on top of their head. They're not really horns, but they're there to help them with camouflage. I think this is a photo that kind of gives you an idea how that works to help break up the silhouette of the bird and help them blend in with the branches there. So you can just kind of make out the silhouette of this owl and those tufts that are sticking straight out. They're trying to hide and be part of the landscape there. They have big, beautiful yellow eyes, a black bill, and they often have this white bib underneath their chin there, which will show up. They are camouflaged like the bark of the hardwood trees. They're really good at blending in. Here's an image of an adult with a couple of fledglings. And this is going to be, we're getting towards the time where these birds are fledging right now. They are one of our earliest nesting bird species. They are on eggs usually by February. They're on their nests setting up their territories December, January. So yeah, middle of winter, like I said.
They don't migrate.
Very hard. No, they're not migratory, so they're a year-round resident there. This is one of our next, speaking of fledglings, of our second most common owl. This is a little eastern screech owl fledgling. I came upon this owl walking down our road in Mendon. We were just on our walk. It was sitting on this fence here, and we knew it had to have been just recently left the nest, but they don't like do much very owl-like at this stage. Still a lot of downy feathers, but you can kind of start to make out little tufts forming, and you see the facial disc there. But he's trying his very best to blend in and make himself look tall and skinny. It was just the cutest thing. But the screech owl is one of our most common nesting birds here as far as owls go. They're cavity nesters. So they depend very highly on tree cavities, old dead woodpecker holes, that kind of thing. They will take to nest boxes. So I believe you probably have a few here at the store for sale, or you could build your own. Nest boxes are important for nest sites, but also for cover in the winter. I had one roosting in our box for the first time in 8 years. I waited forever. Was using it this winter for cover too. They are small. They are not our smallest owl, but they're on the small side. Very, very, very tiny birds, but very fierce little predators. There's a couple of seats up here too, and a chair on the corner if you want to come all the way up here. So when I go back to this goofy looking baby here, there's a time where the birds are fledging and they leave the nest cavity, but the parents will still take care of them because they have kind of shown them the ropes of how to survive in nature. So I'm sure mom and dad were watching us pretty closely nearby, and we didn't stay too long, just to get a few quick photos, and that was it. But we walked right by them. It's like no farther than that chair right there. So pretty neat. Okay. Screech owls can come in a few different colors. And here's an example of how they use the cavities in the trees and also nest boxes. This top photo is showing a couple of the colors that screech owls come in, a red and a gray morph. There's actually also a brown morph, which is kind of a mix, which is similar to the red. But red and gray, you can remember that. It doesn't tell you whether they're male or female. Both sexes come in both colors. We tend to find more grays in our part of their range that match the hardwood forests, more reds down in the south where there's more pines. But we do have both species, both morphs around here.
Do they tend to go back to the same tree cavity?
Yeah, they will. They will. So if they have success, they are likely to return the next nesting season. So yeah, it's they have pretty good site fidelity as far as that goes. But they are a tufted owl, like the great horn. So they are typically the owls that have the tufts on their head, like a little more, are good with a little more open habitat of the forest. The birds that have no tufts are found usually in more denser cover. Okay. Speaking of ones that are not tufted, this is our third year-round resident, the barred owl. And they are very, very comical if you ever do get to hear them at night. They sound like a bunch of monkeys. Like they are the "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" And I cannot imitate their call very well, but that's what their call sounds like, if you put it into words. Really exciting to hear. They're called the barred owl because of this horizontal striping that goes, the barring that goes around their neck and their chest area. They have dark eyes and a bone or light colored bill, so they're a little bit different features there. They do tend to be found around a little more wetter habitats, swamplands, wetlands, where there's forest as well. They are a cavity nester. They need much bigger cavity than a screech owl, but there are nest boxes you could build for barred owls as well. There's a couple more photos here, just showing the face and the barring. And this one sleeping. I can see its eyes are closed. This barred owl actually was up at Braddock Bay in the Owl Woods a couple of years ago. We don't get too many barred owls, but we do have one. We had one this spring, one sighting, and it might have probably moved on. Not a breeding bird, but just wandering around. So they're more the size. They're smaller than a greyhorn, but not too small. Maybe a little bit bigger than a crow, or about crow size in height. So you're thinking about size comparison there. Now we get into the migratory birds. We have two main species of owl that migrate through this area and that use the habitat at Braddock Bay, especially for a stopover. This is our most common one, the northern saw-whet owl. Very tiny, smaller than a screech owl, no bigger than a soda can. And these are birds that are traveling through the area. We tend to start to see them as early as mid-February, and they're getting closer to their end of their migration, like the end of April. We are still seeing them, though, for the next few weeks. They use the habitat at Braddock Bay. They use the cover of the spruce trees and the pine trees to rest in during the day, and then they continue on their journeys at night because they will migrate at night since they are nocturnal. We are still learning a lot about their migration, where they're coming from, where they're going to, but it tends to be heading more further north into the boreal forests. They will nest in the Adirondacks, some of our more heavily forested areas in New York State, though. And they are cavity nesters like the screech owls, so they do depend on that kind of cover too. But to identify them, they have these kind of reddish-brown streaks against a whitish chest, large facial disc, kind of brownish color with some white flecking on the back. Here's a couple other views. These are all photos from Braddock Bay, by the way. So these are birds that were able to be spotted. Sometimes they roost very close to the tree trunk and stay really well hidden that way. But occasionally, when they need a little sunshine and a little warmth, they'll venture out on the edge of the trees. This photo was taken right on the edge of the trail that goes through the owl woods there. This little broody sunning himself, trying to warm up on obviously still a wintry day. As you know, spring can be like that around here. So we do a survey every day to document the owls that are utilizing the habitat there, and that information helps us manage the area to make sure we have favorable habitat for these birds during their migration journeys.
Do they still have a banding station?
We do, yes. It is up and running, and we don't band the owls so much, but we're banding for hawks and falcons and such. We did just open it back up to visitors, but not walk-in visitors yet. You can schedule an appointment. We'll bring a group out and we'll do that. So it's a neat experience. Yeah, but that's also out in the owl woods habitat too. We do owl prowls. We have a few dates left, and these are daytime owl prowls. So we take you on a walk in the daytime to learn about where these birds would be found and try to find them. The nice thing about saw-whet owls is they're more tolerant of activity, and they tend to stay roosted and stay put in their spot as long as you don't disturb them. Because they're so small, their defense is to try to stay hidden and not flush and leave roost. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. So if we're doing it very respectfully from a distance, we are able to observe these owls in the wild in the daytime when we can see them better. So we teach people how to do that because it's a really important thing to know about these birds' lives and how they're using the habitat. The other migratory species that comes through, and they've just started to start their migration through the area, is the long-eared owl. And they do look a little like a great horned owl because they have the feather tufts here, and even though their name says long ears, they're not ears, as we saw before. But they're a little more slender in body build than a great horned. They're more crow-sized birds. Their faces, those feather tufts are a little closer together on their head than the great horns would be. The coloring is similar, but generally these birds are a little more slender in appearance, not as stocky and heavily built. We will see these birds coming through during migration. Often there's more than one in the tree. They put up with each other. They're a little more communal in that in terms of putting up with each other during migration season, especially, and in the winter there'll be larger roosts of multiple birds. So usually if we see one longer, we're always looking around to see if there's another one or more in the same tree or nearby. These birds are a little more flighty and a little more sensitive to disturbance, so often we're seeing them before we even get to where they are fly away. They are very sensitive, but when they do get settled in for the day, they usually stay put. Okay. A couple of other views, those wonderful faces. They always look a little bit surprised, when you're looking at them. That expression there. But they have the white eyebrows too, and a black beak. A lot of similarities to the great horn, but just that overall kind of more slender appearance. Interesting when these birds fly. This is a long-eared owl. Notice it's like ears or feather tufts went missing. So they lay down flat when they're in flight. They do have the ability to raise and lower those feathers. That also aids in communication with other individuals. It can tell you what kind of mood they're in, how alert they are, or whether they're being defensive, and that kind of thing. So looking and observing the body language of these birds can give you a lot of information about how you're doing and whether you're disturbing the birds as well. But it's interesting to see. No ears. They're flying. A relative of the long-eared, the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of the tufts, is the short-eared owl. Now, this bird is considered to be more of a winter resident around here. They're more nomadic, where they don't always come back to the same wintering spots. That kind of rotates around depending on food availability and that kind of thing. Short-eared owls, little tiny tufts that sometimes stick up there. But these are birds of open habitat, grassland nesting birds too. And when you look at the coloring of the short-ears, it's very pheasant-like. And pheasants nest on the ground. Short-eared owls also nest on the ground. So they're nesting in the grassland, meadow, field type habitat, and they need to be able to blend in well with their surroundings too. But these were birds that we say was the word crepuscular. Might be a new term for you. That means they're active at dawn and dusk, and a little bit at night, but you'll start to see them come out maybe in the winter time, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and get active and go hunting over the fields. So it's another species that's a little easier for us when it comes to viewing. We get a lot of pleasure in watching these birds because they're more active during our on our schedule, I guess you could say. So short-eared owl. They do have This is kind of a good exhibit of how they hunt. They hunt, very active hunters, where they will fly over a field very slowly. They have like a moth-like, very buoyant flight, and they'll hunt looking down at the field, looking but also listening. They've got pretty prominent, well-defined facial disc that's going to help them hear better and draw the sound in. But you might see them perch on some of the shorter trees or fence posts and that kind of thing. They're generally not going super high up in trees like some of the other birds are. So short-eared owls are again one of our main winter visitors. We actually sometimes see them migrate through the hawk watch because they are daytime active birds. We have one on the count this year. They usually see them early in the morning passing through. Everybody recognizes this beautiful bird, right? So now we get into some of the winter visitors, more seasonal type visitors that are not here all year, but this is what keeps things a little livelier and exciting in the winter, and the doldrums of winter, where we're trying to figure out things to do in terms of birds. Going on a search for snowy owls around the lakeshore, around some of our agricultural lands. Is sometimes a nice adventure in the boredom of winter. But snowy owls are more of an Arctic breeder. They nest up in the Arctic on the tundra there, but in the winter they will venture south. And even we often get at least a few in New York State. Some years more than a few, and some years a lot. We've got it fluctuates. And what's the number of snowy owls that we see on a year-to-year basis really is a reflection of how well they do in the breeding season up north. How many successful nests they had, how many fledglings were raised to success. And that's in relation to their food supply. They are primarily, in the summer and on the breeding grounds, rodent eaters of those famous little lemmings. When lemming populations boom, so do snowy owls and some of the other predators that eat them. But they are also known to take birds, like some of the ground nesting birds up in the Arctic. But when they're down here in the winter, they'll prey on a lot of ducks, which is why you'll see them along the lakeshore often. That's one place to go to find them, besides going out to the fields and the airports, where you can find the rats, the rodents, and the moles.
Swallow a duck, they must do.
No, right. So, and that's true for all species. There's going to be a limit to what they can swallow whole. If it's small enough, they will, because they don't mind eating everything. But if it gets too large, just like other raptors, they hold it with their talons and they tear at that beak. Yeah. So you might come across, a carcass with just, they'll discard the flight feathers or even just the wings, and then eat just the main part of the bird there. Okay. Some other views here of snowies. This one was actually taken up on Ontario Beach Park a few years back. So just kind of showing where they might hang out in the winter time. And a nice flight shot here show how long their wings are. Their wingspan 50 to 57 inches. So they're one of the largest ones around here. Very impressive birds. Here's one species that has a difference in plumage in terms of male versus female. The males are nearly all white, but the females have this dark barring, black barring on their chests and on their wings, and that's also to help with camouflage, because they are ground nesters too. And in the Arctic, in the summer, there's no snow, so they have to blend in with vegetation on the ground. Go back. I just want to point out the feet on these birds too. So the talons, you can see these stark black talons poking out from these wonderfully feathered feet. The feathering helps with extra insulation, of course, keep them warm and protection. They're like big snowshoes, but they're also very, very tough and strong, like to capture their food. Now, going back to some of our other winter visitors that we will get, this one looks like he's winking. Yeah. This kind of looks like a saw-whet owl, right? They're very, very similar. The boreal owl is an occasional visitor. We actually had one in late February this year at the Owlwoods just for one day. They look like a bigger saw-whet. So if you come across a saw-whet, it looks like it's bigger. We always take a second look and look for the distinguishing features. What separates saw-whets from boreal? Boreal owl has a light colored bill. A saw-whet has a black bill. So that's one of the main things we always look for to tell them apart. The flecking on the top of the head is a little different, and the coloring. I like to say like the coloring on the boreal owl is more like a coffee espresso kind of color brown, and the saw-whet is more like a chocolatey brown. So those are the ways we birders describe things. So you have to find ways to help people understand that. So this is one that's a very rare visitor, but it's worth checking places like the Owlwoods, especially early in the migration season for these guys. A couple other images just to show. This is an interesting shot because when you look at the face and how pronounced how the shape of the facial disc change, almost looks like he's getting a little bit of like horns sticking up there, but that bird is very on alert. And so it's also trying to make itself hide out in the open a little better. So when they're wide-eyed and watching you, that gives you a clue like, okay, maybe I should make my visit short, take a few steps back, and keep the bird comfortable. As opposed to this bird who's sound asleep, which when we know, okay, he's comfortable, we're not really disturbing, we're going to watch that face and make sure he doesn't wake up. This is how we want to find these birds, resting. So very important that they do that during the day before they make their long journeys at night. This is another boreal from, I think, 2016 or 17 that showed up in the Owlwoods. But there's that light colored bill there that sealed the deal that it was a boreal for us. Very exciting. Now, the two next species are super rare visitors, but they're worth mentioning because if you venture up, especially up in the north country of your state, or even go a little bit across the border into Canada there, you might find some of these specialty birds. This is a northern hawk owl. They do have kind of a more hawk-like appearance, and they are very active during the day, like our other raptors. That don't have as round of facial disc. So that kind of what gives them that more hawk-like face. And they eat a lot more birds, like an accipiter does too. They'll eat rodents as well. So the hawk owl, and you can even see like their wings. Their feathers aren't going to be as soft because they're more diurnal. Their wings are a little more pointed for more forceful flight. But yeah, and you'll see all kinds of expressive photos of owls turning their heads. And they're doing that to listen really more than anything, focusing on the sound and figuring out where it's coming from and what it might be. So they're not just, there could be a side of curiosity, but it's more just trying to hear and hear things better. So that's the hawk owl. And this big, beautiful, I like to think like a grandpa owl, like they have just this noble appearance here. Great gray owl. Very tall, long and tall from tip to tail, the top of the head. They measure longer than a great horn or a snowy, but in size of body mass, they're much less. There's a lot of fluff out there. They have these huge facial discs. And they're known for being able to capture mice and rodents under 2 feet of snow. So they don't see those critters under the snow, but they can hear the pinpoint where the sound of their tunneling is coming from. So really impressive when it comes to that. There's a nice shot of the long wingspan on these birds, again, actively hunting. because they're more northern species, you might see them more active in the daytime during the winter there. But a nice yellow, they have this black bow tie in the middle of their chin there, the dark, light colored beak too. Incredible camouflage. So can you find the owl on this side?
On that side.
Not until you see its eyes.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
in.
Oh, my goodness.
So this is an incredible example of the camouflage.
Wow.
So they could be sitting right out in the open in the daytime, and we would have a really hard time.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And the last species of our New York State owls is the barn owl. These are sometimes called the heart-shaped faced owl, the monkey-faced owl. They do have more heart-shaped, really pronounced facial discs. They have superb hearing, very different from some of our other owls. They're also, like the short-eared owl, a grassland species. They depend on meadows and habitat. Called the barn owl because are found known to nest in barns because they are a cavity nester as well. And if there's a barn that's available near fields where there's lots of rodents, they'll often take up residence there.
They used to be a lot more common when there was a lot more farmland, wasn't there?
Yeah, so there's then traditionally they're not a super common species in our part of the state. Down in the southern part of New York State, that's where our barn owls have been traditionally known to. So not to say that they couldn't live around here, but they're very rare to find in this area. I think there might have been the last one I know of was found. I think it was found dead in Livingston County. So
like
it's
longer summers and shorter winters, probably.
yeah, they're not a super cold weather bird, but they don't migrate though, so they can be found in somewhat, in our climate too. They are probably responsible for some of the haunted house stories in some neighborhoods because they are very white underneath. They don't hoot. They don't have a pleasant hoot like other owls. They screech and they scream and they hiss. And there's a very, very scary kind of sounds come out of these birds. So when you have this silent creature flying towards you, very white, making these hissing sounds, you can imagine how the imagination gets going at night. There's a ghost in that building. They probably are very responsible for some of those stories. So this is a captive bird that was a part of a bird show that I saw a few years back in Arizona. I put this in there not to gross you out, but to show you how wide the bird's mouths can open and how they do have the ability to swallow things whole. And this bird flew to the glove to get a chick and poked it right down. But it kind of shows you just how you only see a little part of the bird's beak when you see their face, but when they open up, that just gives you an idea how they can swallow their food whole there. Okay. So let's see. Now, those are the lowdown, the lineup of species that we have in New York State. Now who are our most common birds, and even where you might go to find some of these birds. If you come up to Braddock Bay and either you go on an organized owl prowl or you go out on your own, you do have some guidelines for viewing the birds. They're based a lot on the American Birding Association Code of Birding Ethics and how to approach birds without disturbing them. So we have this listed in around the woods. A lot of it is common sense, approach quietly, keep the disturbance down that way. Let creatures come to you, right? Observe at a distance. Sometimes it's hard in the owl woods to get far away. As you saw one of the photos of the bird in the sun, that bird was right on the edge of the trail. So we didn't really have much space to go, but it didn't mind. So watching their body language though, and knowing the signs of stress versus comfort are going to be very helpful for you and the bird. You'll have a better experience viewing the bird, and they all won't be disturbed when they need their rest. we have this out here, respect the landscape and habitat, not just because you might disturb what's growing there or other wildlife, but also for your safety. We can get caught up in watching birds and creatures and wildlife and start backing up, and you got to be aware where ledges are, rocks and tree stumps and things like that. I've seen it happen. So we're going to respect the landscape, know your surroundings, and you'll have a good, pleasant experience. So this is the guidelines that are posted in the Owlwoods. They're also on our website there. We have it gets a lot of photographers and birders out there, and we don't police the woods, but we do have volunteers that are either out on the survey or doing guided walks that help to inform people about behavior and how it can benefit or not benefit the wildlife there. So we try to teach people while they're out there the best way to behave. Here are some resources. So if you want to take a picture of the wall there, some great websites. There's tons of information out there about owls in general. And these are some of my favorite resources for learning. If you want to look up the sounds, the calls that these birds make, the International Owl Center, the Owl Research Institute, the Owl Pages, they all have those calls. Plus, insight into some of the research that's being done on different species, their status in North America. And if your owl pellets are your thing, but you don't really want to get into actual doing it yourself, there's a virtual owl pellet dissection website, which is a lot of fun. It's like a little game. You just click on it, and you can learn about the different bones of the different animals and that kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun. All right. So any questions right now? I'll turn the lights on.
Thank you, that was great. Thank you very much.
I'll leave that up there. So and the best thing about teaching people about these birds is I have the privilege to be able to share a real one with you. And it's kind of a guarantee when we do our walks. Sometimes we are able to bring our education birds out. Guarantee you'll see something. It may not be flying around, but here it is. So part of our education programs, we have a few non-releasable raptors that have come to us permanently injured and need a permanent home, and they're now used for education programs. So today, of course, the topic is owls, and we have one owl in our collection. And I'm going to introduce you to our great horned owl. No. That's contrary to what people feel. Even though they're nocturnal and they're equipped for night vision, their daytime vision works fine, and it doesn't bother them at all to be out here in the daytime. I'm going to try to. Now I'm hoping that she dried off by now, but being the wonderfully spring rainy day that it is out there, she loves to sit in the rain. So she was looking a little soggy when I went to pack her up today. And she totally has the choice to go sit in the shelter or sit out in the rain. She's always in the rain. And she looks rather funny, but hopefully she dried off by now. But if not, that's okay. She may poop, and that's okay. I promise to clean it up. All right, I forgot her normal perch, so we might end up using this. Here. We might have, sometimes she likes to take a break and sit on a perch, so forgot her regular perch. Improvise. So here she is. This is our great horned owl. You can say hello. She's going to take some time to look around and and get her bearings and see who's visiting with her today. She's with us because she does have permanent wing damage, which is why this wing on the left side kind of droops a little bit. She can fly, but she flies crooked because that wing is now shorter than the other wing. And not having the ability of perfect flight would really be a handicap for her out in the wild as far as hunting goes. You'll get to see as she looks around just how kind of robotic and mechanical their head turning is. That's because their eyes are fixed; they cannot move them. So they need to look.
Because her ear tucks are down.
They're not.
No,
She's kind of in between right now. If she was more relaxed, they'd be up a little bit more.
Also, up is relaxed.
Up and not super skinny. Yeah.
Kind of
When
like
they're down and flat on their head, they're usually being defensive and a little bit nervous. But she's kind of in the middle right now because it's a new crowd, new faces and that kind of thing. Yes.
your scent.
No, there's not really much when it comes to scent with these birds. They don't rely on a sense of smell. In fact, she'll more recognize my voice and my appearance. They're more visual, more sound oriented.
But she does know you.
Yeah, she does. Let's see if she wants to sit. Yeah, she likes to kill close apart. That's why
I can't remember which owl, but I think we learned that they sometimes eat skunk.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because you talked about the scent. They eat a variety of animals, a lot of rodents, other birds, and even larger animals like rabbits and skunks are definitely on their menu. Often, sewer birds come into rehabilitators injured with smelling, just reeking of skunk. They don't have a sense of smell, so it doesn't bother them. And as long as the spray doesn't get in their
If
face,
they have a fight with the skunk.
they're usually okay. A skunk is a larger prey. Come back. Look at this better. Skunks are larger in terms of the scale of their prey there, but they have super strong talons, and that's the means of all raptors are going to kill their prey. They have the ability to squeeze and grasp with 400 pounds of pressure per square inch. So not only are their talons sharp for piercing, but the whole pressure will help to kill their prey. And all of this hunting and killing other critters may sound mean to some of you, but that's what they're designed to do. And having predators as part of the ecosystem is essential to help keeping prey populations balanced and at bay. We all know how rodents can like to breed and can grow in their population from year to year. So predators like owls, hawks, foxes even are a really important part of keeping balance out there.
Beautiful bird.
Yeah, she's pretty gorgeous. And it's a great way to see up close the coloring and the pattern of their feathers, how it's very much like the bark of a tree. Usually darker, also on the top, on the back side, a little lighter underneath, but even the striping here.
Now, what do you feed her?
She eats mostly rats and mice.
Live one?
No. Yeah, everything is already killed for these birds. We buy in bulk frozen food. So every day she usually eats about a rat, maybe 1 or 2 mice a day as well. Always talk about food. She's like, no, you don't eat till later anyways, right?
How long is it?
She's panting a little now. She's warm. It's warm in here. A little bit of nerves as well. We don't have her normal perch, which is my fault for forgetting it. I have the perch, but not the pole. So we're not as comfortable as usually. They have a really long lifespan. Great horned owls are one of the top predators. Not too many things mess with them. They're known for living to be into their 30s, both in the wild and in captivity. We don't know her age because she came to us as an adult. And it's really hard to know past a bird's first or second year of life, where they're at. So she's been with us for about 6 years now. She's probably at least, I would say, 8 or 9 years old because she was healing and in captivity a couple of years before we got her even. So,
And how many eggs do they generally lay? How many babies?
yeah, great horned owls will have typically like 2 or 3 every breeding season. We're trying to hand out our wish list.
She handed one out.
Yeah,
Very nice.
distribute the
How long does it take? And I was thinking like this to get through the people.
It's going to vary by bird, and it can take as little as maybe a couple months, or even as long as a year. It really we go at their pace. So the first thing that we do when we have a bird, I'm trying to say it again. There you go. We get a bird in. There we go. Is just spend time with them and getting used to us being around. We feed them, and they know where all the positive things come from, and they try to make it as positive of an experience as possible. Then we introduce things like the glove and the jesses, the equipment that they need to wear, that kind of thing. It took her I think it was about almost a year before we were doing programs and out in public. So, but I have other birds that only took, about a month and we're ready to go. So it really just depends on the bird's comfort level and how they adapt to captive life. So,
Well, like with dogs, some dogs are more gentle, some are more aggressive. So does that pertain to the owl species where some breed can become more comfortable earlier?
yeah, that definitely is some of that with different species of raptors, owls, and hawks alike. Some are more higher energy, high strung, tend to be more sensitive to different things. Generally, like owls can be very difficult to work with, especially ones that come from the wild. She is a wild-born owl. She's actually been super good to work with. Sometimes they just have these personalities that just don't work out. Whereas if you have an imprinted bird, one that's raised by humans from a young age, they tend to do better. We got very lucky with this bird.
People don't use them for hawking, do they? I mean,
For falconry, not too often. Again, because owls are a little tougher to work with, tougher to train. They have like their own sense. But I know that there have been some people to use great horned owls. I'm not sure about barn owls, but yeah. I'm not a falconer. I'm just trained for education purposes. So.
Her feathers on her feet. I can't see.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure.
She does have feathering on her toes, all the way down to the base of her talons. Not quite as extensive as not as thick as a snowy owl, but yeah. So she's got that extra cover. Great horns are, like I said, we mentioned how they nest in the middle of winter around here. So that's just kind of a testament. It keeps extra insulation, extra protection, from bites and things like that too. If they don't quite hit their target right, and the animal bites back, and that can happen. So just a little extra protection for them. But yeah, very well insulated for this kind of climate. But you can find great horned owls all over North America, even in the desert and warmer climates. They just adapt a little bit differently and adjust. Feathers are insulate from the cold, but also from the heat and from the rain and elements in different ways. And you probably have observed this in the winter at bird feeders, where you have like cardinals and chickadees look like they put a few pounds on. That's because they're puffing their feathers to trap the warmth. But in the summer, they look more slender and more sleek. When it's warm out, they look little, can make them look a little skinny, like keep those feathers tight to the body.
Can you tell but right now the way she is that she's feeling more comfortable?
Yes, she's definitely, and I think you guys can see that too. She does always feel a little more comfortable on a perch. She's good on the glove but I think it's just a balancing thing too. My arm is not as stable as the solid perch. It's not going anywhere, not wobbling around. So she's always done well on a perch. Whereas I've been a hawk that would rather be on the glove. She's like, no, I want to be with you. So it really, again, it's an individual bird thing where we judge their comfort. And you can just see how her posture changed when she sat on the perch, more natural, more upright, like she typically would look, which gives you a better idea of how they should appear if you come across them in the wild too.
Is the panting always nervousness, or they just do that?
It's not always nerves. And anytime their body temperature goes up, which can be environmental, or nerves, or stress, that kind of thing. We're still getting out of the cold weather, and she's housed outdoors all year round. So anytime we're indoors in the winter months, she's always warmer. Yes.
You didn't say your name.
Yeah, I didn't, because she doesn't really have one. So I choose not to name the birds, give them a name. We call her Great Horned Owl, because that's what she is, so that you remember what you saw. And if you were out there and out and about and you see something that looks like this, you'll remember what it is. She, of course, has earned her own nicknames. She's our biggest bird, so she's the queen, of course. And she's got that kind of air about her, but actually she's really a very shy bird by nature, and she's never been aggressive. She just kind of sits back and examines things, and that's why it took a little longer for her to get comfortable doing programs in the beginning, which is totally fine. We go at their own pace. She's good to look at. You watch them blink. I often have people ask, does they ever blink? But they do tend to keep their eyes open longer than we can. But if you watch carefully, you'll see they blink from the top down. You might also even see that third eyelid inside come across the eye. They have this clear third eyelid called the nictitating membrane, which comes across their eye and keeps it clean and clear. And it also will come across like when they're hunting or they're flying through the trees, they can keep their eyes open and see, but the nictitating membrane will cover and protect their eyes from getting struck.
It's transparent?
Yeah. So it's like safety goggles, built-in goggles there for helping protect their eyes. So yeah. Great.
She's saying, what's next?
What are we doing
Going
next?
home.
Going home. So I can go
When
back
do I
to
get my daily bread?
Yeah. So interesting thing about feeding her, and they are typically nocturnal by nature. So she's a little more active at night. She just doesn't sleep a solid, 8 to 10 hours a day like we hope to do, but it's just more like napping. And she changes her position in her enclosure throughout the day. On a rainy day like today, she sits out in the rain. But I will feed most of the birds in the afternoon. She will eat a mouse for a snack. If I have mice for her, she'll gulp them down. But when I give her rat, she'll leave that for later. That's like the main meal. So she won't eat it, even if I gave it to her in the middle of the day. So we have to kind of monitor that.
Where do you get your supply?
Yeah, it's one of those things people don't realize, especially and with zoo animals too. Any captive wild animal that eats that kind of thing, it's quite a business to raise feeder animals. We have a company that we order from that's actually up in Hilton. And there's another online resource. There's Rodent Pro, which does all different sizes of rats and mice and quail and stuff like that, just to feed these birds, or other animals, other reptiles, and other captive animals. So yeah, that's our main cost when it comes to caring for the birds. It costs right now. Rats are up to almost $3 a piece.
Okay.
And so that's for one rat. Mice are about $1. So
How did you get involved in
My journey to this point started long time ago. I've always been interested in wildlife. I knew I went to school for biology. I studied at Geneseo, and then I also became a teacher later on in life. But I started at Braddock Bay when I was just a college student, learning about migration and doing different things, and I really got into the education part of it and sharing knowledge with people. So that goes back a little more than 30 years now. But it took me a few times to get up, to go up to Braddock Bay and actually see some of these birds. But once I had my first big hawk flight, I was hooked. It's just an amazing thing to be able to see these creatures in the wild, and in knowing that we have this resource in our own backyard, so to speak. There's so much more out there for us to discover and share. It's really neat. Just got to start looking and have the right people there to show you. So that's kind of one of our aims, is being able to provide those experiences for people.
My husband and I went to the Band-Aid station
Okay.
a few years ago, and it's a wonderful experience to see. And of course, it's how they hit different size cylinders according to the size of the bird's body.
Yep. You never look at a Pringles can the same way. Yeah. So what she's referring to is when we band raptors, catch a lot of different types of hawks. Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks are common ones that visit your backyard. We get a lot of them on migration. When we capture a hawk for banding, one of the first things we do when we get it out of the trap or the net is put it head first into a cylinder or a can, to take away its vision and help the bird stay calm while they're processing, putting the band on and stuff. Well, a Pringles can is the perfect size for a female sharp-shinned hawk. And we get a lot of sharp-shins. So that's actually one of the things that is often on our wish list is Pringles cans. So if you have any empty cans, feel free to donate them. But it's just a safer way to handle the birds, keeps them calmer. We can weigh the bird in the can. And it keeps them from flapping and getting injured during the short process we hold them for.
It's amazing how quickly they do it because they don't want the birds stressed anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's usually a few minutes. But, yeah, thanks for coming out today. Feel free, if I'll have her off to the side. I don't think she's going anywhere, but there's stuff on the table here. You can take more information, or if you want to get on our mailing list, you're welcome to put your name down there. Maybe we'll see you at Bird of Prey Days.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Is this your lecture today?
Yeah, but we're gonna be back. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, in a couple Tuesdays.
Yeah. We'll that focus will be more on the other raptors, the hawks, the falcons, the diurnal species that we see. Yeah, and I'll have at least one of our birds here too.
Very nice.